Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your patience. Ms. Jocelyn Augustus Latouche, Principal of the Corinth Government School. Mr. Philbert Lewis, Chairman of the N.I.S. Board of Directors. The Director of the N.I.S., Mr. Dorset Cromwell. Ms. Cindy Ann St. Bernard, Deputy Director of the N.I.S. Management and staff of the N.I.S. Members of the media, specially invited guests, listeners online, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to one in an ongoing series of stakeholder consultations to discuss the recommended changes to our Social Security program based on the 13th actual review. Before we start off this evening's proceedings, I'd like to invite Ms. Colleen St. Bernard to give us an opening prayer.
Please let us all stand. Almighty Father, to whom all praises are given, we thank you for your goodness, your mercies, and your grace. Thank you for each and every one assembled here and online, O Lord, as I lift this afternoon's proceedings unto you. Father God, guide the presenters, give them strength and clarity of thought to continue delivering the much-needed information to this nation. As I commit this afternoon's proceedings into your hands, take charge, O God, as we seek the understanding and reception of the attendees here, as the information is brought to them. O God, I pray for yet another successful evening of active interaction. In your Son's precious and holy name, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. St. Bernard. I'll now invite our HR manager, Ms. Asha James, for some short welcome remarks.
Mrs. Jocelyn Augustus Latouche, Principal of the Corinth Government School. Mr. Philbert Lewis, Chairman of the N.I.S. Board of Directors. Mr. Dorset Cromwell, Director of the N.I.S. Ms. Cindy Ann St. Bernard, Deputy Director. Employers, employees, invited guests, management, and staff of the N.I.S. Good evening, everyone. My name is Asha James, and I am pleased to be standing here with my team, welcoming you who are here in person and those viewing virtually. A warm welcome to each one of you. The National Insurance Board, your Social Security organization, has proudly served you for many years. In fact, this year we celebrated 40 years of existence. This is a journey that we are extremely proud of, one in which we have consistently been able to provide financial support to our contributors in times of need. This could not be accomplished without prudent, innovative, and sound management of the fund. It is on the back of this undoubted experience and stellar history that we are here this evening, confidently discussing the proposed changes which will ensure the continued existence of the board, allowing us the ability to serve you and the future generation for years to come. Today, we are very excited to be engaging with you, our valuable stakeholders, in discussions surrounding the results of the actuarial reviews, the new unemployment benefits, and the revamp of the self-employed regulations. It is our hope that through fruitful discourse, you will have a clearer understanding of these parametric reforms and therefore the need for change. Welcome once again, and we look forward to your participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. James. Before we start the presentations that we have this afternoon, just a few housekeeping items. I would like everyone, if they could, to put their phones on vibrate, please, and also to hold any questions until the end of the two presentations. All right. Now I will invite Ms. Lisa Douglas to give us a presentation on parametric reform.
Good afternoon to everyone. All right, my name is Lisa Douglas. I'm the Public Relations Officer. And thank you so much for joining us this evening. And this evening, we will be talking about and discussing, and we really look forward to your feedback. And at the end of it, we really hope that we could work towards having a sustainable national insurance fund. So we would look at our history of parametric changes to the NIS, the 11th actuarial review. We would also look at what's happening with our countries in the region. We would look at some liquidity concerns, the 13th actuarial review, some reform measures that we absolutely need to take, and then we would wrap up. Okay, so we would start this evening with this photo on the screen that I'm sure none of us like the look of it. It just looks sad. It looks like, well, what is going to happen to me? How I'm going to feed myself and my family? The future doesn't look very bright. And that is how our Social Security Fund is currently looking and would continue to look if we continue to not implement our recommendations from our different actuarial reviews. Every 3 years, the National Insurance Scheme is required to conduct an actuarial review. And coming out of the review, the actuary would present a document to the government of Grenada with recommendations, with his or her findings from the review. And those recommendations would speak to a few things. And one of the most important is ensuring that the fund remains sustainable. Of course, the actuary would also make recommendations to add new benefits, increase benefits, etc., the contribution rate, the insurable earning ceiling. And over the years, we've seen the NIS adding new benefits. One of the main ones was our employment injury benefit in 1998, etc. But one of the things that we haven't done is those recommendations that speaks to ensuring that the NIS remains sustainable. So let's start from the 7th actuarial review that was conducted in 2002. Now in 2002, the actuary made a recommendation to gradually increase the retirement age over a 15-year period. That's in the 7th review. Now, in the 8th review, the actuary again made another recommendation similar to the 7th review, to increase the retirement age over a 9 to 12-year period. So we also see that from the 7th to the 8th review, the time period the actuary is recommended that the increase be made would have shortened. Now, while that was happening in Grenada, we always have to remember that it's not just NIS Grenada that has Social Security. And in fact, all our islands in the region, we have the same type of fund, a defined benefit fund. Now, so while this wasn't done in Grenada, our friends in St. Lucia and in Barbados, they both had similar recommendations, and they did what was necessary and started to increase their pensionable age. Now, in the night review again, the actuary came back and said, listen, Grenada, in order for your fund to remain sustainable, you need to make changes. And one of the most impactful changes is a gradual increase in the pension age. So let's go from 60 to 65 over, from 60 to 65, and that was recommended in 2016, right? Now, the actuary also made a recommendation to increase the contribution rate by 2% in 2015. So the increase in the pensionable age was not done. The increase in the contribution rate was not done. Now, the 11th review in 2015 again made a recommendation to gradually increase the pensionable age from 60 to 65 over a 16-year period, with a 2% increase again in 2018. Of course, we know in 2018 that wasn't done. In the 12th review, the actuary again, so you'd realize a pattern. We've been carrying out these actuarial reviews, and at the end of it, the reports are being presented to policymaker after policymaker, but absolutely nothing has been done in order to ensure the sustainability of the National Insurance Fund. So the actuary, after the 12th review, again made a recommendation to increase the pension age and also to increase the contribution rate, not by 2% this time, but by 2.6%. Of course, we know in 2020, we got only the 2% increase, which of course would make an impact, but of course not as significant as if the pension age was increased. Now, although this wasn't done, there were increases that the N.I.S. actually implemented. And those increases really spoke to paying out more in benefits, because we have one main function at the N.I.S. We collect contributions so that we can pay benefits. So although we didn't do those changes that speaks to sustainability, in 1994 and in 1997, we did increase pension. So pensioners got an increase between 5 to 35%, depending on when you first got the benefit. Again, in 97, pensions were increased by 8%. Right? And then in 2006, again, another pension increase between 2% and 16%. So we have made changes. It's just that we have been really deciding to, let's do this one and not this one. And we have only done those that we figure, well, would be popular with people. So one of the things that our policymakers have been guilty of doing is only implementing. You'd realize the ceiling also increased gradually. And yes, at first, when the ceiling increases, the N.I.S., of course, would collect a bit more, but the real benefit would be to the contributors, because once the ceiling increases, you pay out bigger benefits. So we could all realize that, listen, we really have been ignoring our actuarial reviews. And if we continue to ignore our actuarial reviews, everything that the actuaries recommend, we will see them coming to pass, and they have been coming to pass. Now, let's look at the key findings of the 11th review. Now, after the 11th review, well, from the 11th review, the actuary stated that starting in 2016, our annual contributions that we collect will be insufficient to meet total expenditure. So it means all the contributions we collect from employers, employees, and self-employed persons would not be enough to pay benefits and cover administrative expenses. So investment income must be used to cover the shortfall. So of course, the N.I.S. reserves would continue to grow at that point, but obviously at a slower rate. So think about it this way. Every month you are working for $1,000, but your expenses are $1,500, so you have to dip into the money in the bank now to cover those additional expenses. And that is what the actuary said would happen to N.I.S. Grenada. If nothing is done, starting 2022, total income, meaning contribution income plus returns on investment, would not be able to cover total expenses. So we know at that point, our reserves would stop growing, because obviously you're not adding anything to what you have. And if your reserve stops growing, it would start decreasing. Because if it's not growing, then it means you are not adding and you're losing. And during 2035, the reserves would drop to zero, so you would have No more $900 million in reserves, and automatically the contribution rate to cover expenses would have to move to 22.5%. So there will be no need to have a consultation just to cover expenses, to pay benefits, to pay administrative expenses, just to operate on a daily basis. Automatically, all of us have to contribute 22.5%. That is what the actuary said would happen. And guess what? It most certainly did happen, and even before the actuary said it would. Now I want you to look at this line here, and it's a line that shows us our reserve expenditure ratio. It sounds fancy, but what it simply means, how long could the NIS last if all the liabilities we have now, we keep it, so we don't add any new benefits, we don't collect any new contributions, no more investment, just from what we have now. How many years can we survive? How many years would we be able to continue to operate? And in 1987, that ratio was 25 years, 25.2. But look at what has happened over time, because we have done absolutely nothing. You'd realize at the end of 2021, it was down to 8 years. So we see the marked decline because we have not done what we are supposed to do. And this is a snapshot also of the benefits that we paid in 2021. Now, if you look at the top, it starts with pension, and the first benefit that's listed there is the age benefit. And in 2021, you'd realize the NIS paid out $86.5 million to pensioners, just age benefit alone. At that point, the contribution income, what we collected from employers, employees, self-employed persons, it was 96 million. So just our age pension alone represented 96% of what we collected. So if you just drop them quickly to sickness benefit, you'd realize sickness benefit was $10.7 million. So just paying out age benefit in 2021 and sickness benefit, that used up all the contributions we collected. So somebody may have looked and said, wow, NIS collected $96 million in 2021, but we'd realize just in age and sickness, that's it. It was wiped out. So it means investment income had to cover the shortfall. And I would show you very shortly what happens when investment income isn't able to do that. But first, let's look at another picture. This picture here shows you the NIS administrative expenses. I know sometimes when we do these consultations, and whether you're on Facebook, on the radio, one of the things persons might be tempted to say, well, maybe the reason why NIS is in the position it is because they are not managing the fund prudently. They are not using our monies in the way it's supposed to be used. We're not doing good investment. We need to look for better investments, etc. Or maybe NIS just squandering the money. So I know for the persons in the back, you may not be able to see the yellow line, but at the end, we could always send out the presentation to everybody. Now at the top, we have a line there, and it shows it's at the 12% mark, the green line. And it shows the mark that the National Insurance Regulation says your administrative expenses should never go above that mark, 12%, all right? Now, although the regulation sets the benchmark at 12%, we have been keeping it on, or we have a target of keeping it 6% and under. And if you look at the line, it has been actually going down. So in 2012, you'd realize we were at 6%, but since then, although the cost of everything else continues to increase, you'd realize for NIS Grenada, our administrative expenses on an annual basis continues to decline. So it means we are doing something very right when it comes to managing the assets of the fund. So we know it's not bad management, so what is it? Now, before we go to what is it, let's look to see what's happening with the other countries in the region. Is it just N.I.S. Grenada alone that is in this position where we have to make changes? Let's start with Dominica. Now, Dominica has the same fund like us, a defined benefit fund, and they too, at the stage of maturity of their fund, they had to make changes also. But guess what? They did not do like N.I.S. Grenada and decide, listen, let's find something else, this wouldn't work. The retirement age currently in Dominica is 65. And the minimum number of contribution weeks is still at 500, but look at what's happening also with their contribution rate. It's at 13.75%. And in addition to gradually increasing the pension age to 65, Dominica is also gradually increasing their contribution rate. So by 2031, they will be at 15.75%. So you'd realize that Dominica has to make changes. Now, right, let's go to another country that's very interesting. Antigua. Antigua is one of the countries who, similar to N.I.S. Grenada, deferred making changes. And one of the things that N.I.S. Antigua is now grappling with is the ability to actually pay benefits. So although they have now started to increase their retirement age, so currently, last year, it went to 64, so it would go to 65 in 2025. They have also increased their contribution rate. So from 2023 is 15%, and it would go to 16% by 2025. That's 2 years from now. The minimum number of contribution weeks required to qualify for a pension also started to increase in Antigua. It's now at 2023, it's now at 700, so this year it's also 700, but 2025, it would go to 750. And I want to encourage us to look at this year. It's kind of small, but I'm going to read it out for you. I know sometimes when we talk about Antigua, persons might be thinking, well, why are you so zeroing on Antigua, and is this really true? So I went to their Facebook page and I pulled out one of their media release on their Facebook page. Now, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the National Insurance Scheme paid out an unfunded unemployment benefit. Persons received $330 a month, and we paid just over $5 million. Now, and I know persons were saying, geez, it's not enough, etc. But one of the things that we'd realize, over in Antigua, they put out this press release on their page, and it reads like this. The Antigua and Barbuda Social Security Board wishes to apologize for the undue delay of pension payments for July 2021. The board is heavily dependent on current contributions to fund current benefit payments and operations. Further, the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic continues to impact the economic activity, which has implications for the board's operations. The month of July and November are generally slow contribution months, and we are now in that slow period. So while we were complaining that, look, just $330, Antigua couldn't pay anything at all in terms of a relief. In fact, they couldn't even pay regular benefits. And I've shared this experience that I've had speaking to persons in Antigua in terms of not just having to wait to get your pension, but even your short-term benefits. Now, there's a flip side of other countries like St. Vincent. St. Vincent is also changing. So currently, their retirement age, They are currently at 63. They would get to 65 in 2028. The minimum number of contributions, so similar to us, the number of weeks required is 500, but they are also increasing that. So currently it's 650 as at 2022, and then at 2025 it would increase, and then 2028 it would go to 750. The contribution rate it's at 10%. So that's St. Vincent. We also have Barbados, and Barbados is very unique because the retirement age is already at 67. So if we are talking about our age in Grenada, and we are there hemming and hawing about gradually increasing from 60, Barbados is already at 67. And the contribution rates, if we look, you'd realize is 20.25%. So for the N.I.S. benefits, persons contribute now in Barbados 18.25, and then for unemployment and severance, that makes up the additional. So if you're an employee in Barbados on a monthly basis, 20.25% is contributed on your behalf. And the Prime Minister of Barbados, so at the highest level, the Prime Minister has been making a clarion call. Listen, Bajans, we're at 67, but we need to increase if we want to ensure that our National Insurance Fund remains sustainable. And Prime Minister Mia Mottley would realize, have published and said publicly that this must be done to ensure sustainability. So let's look at the assets and how much of it is represented in our GDP among the islands in the region. Because one of the things that we have to come to terms with is that the strength of our economy is heavily dependent on how strong our social security institution is. So in Anguilla, you'd realize that total assets represents 36.2% of their GDP. And that is very significant. So think about their GDP not having that 36.2%. Similarly, in Grenada, 29.5%. In St. Kitts, 59%, almost 60%. In St. Lucia, 32%. So we have to come to terms with the fact that if our National Insurance Fund go under, it means our country as a whole would go under. This is another picture of what is happening with our different schemes and how sustainable they are based on the recommendations they've already made. So, sorry, not recommendations, but the implementations of the actuarial recommendations. So let's look at Antigua first. So the actuaries for the Antigua Social Security Board stated that their expenditure would exceed contribution income starting 2009. And in 2010, their expenditure would exceed total income. And then obviously their reserves would be depleted that same year. And just like our actuaries have recommended, once your reserves are depleted, automatically you have a really high contribution rate just to survive. And you have situations where persons would come for their pension and you have to be told, listen, this is a slow period, as we saw that N.I.S. Antigua had to do. This is a slow period. We have no money to pay benefits. So our pensioners can get their pension. Our women having their children and not able to get a maternity benefit. Imagine you get injured on the job and you can't receive a benefit. You have to wait. Now, the opposite is true in St. Lucia. St. Lucia was very prudent. They started to implement the increase in the pensionable age since 2015. So look at, compared to Grenada and Antigua, what that has done to when the reserves would be depleted. So for Grenada, we see that 2016 expenditure exceeds income, 2022 total income and expenditure, we're in jeopardy, and by 2032, we are at zero. St. Lucia, on the other hand, look at it. You'd realize by 2025 is the first time their expenditure would exceed total income. And their reserves is projected to be depleted till 2050. And that's because St. Lucia made and implemented the recommendations very, very early. So while we were only able to pay 5 point something million, in COVID, St. Lucia was able to pay over $80 million. So persons, they paid that same unfunded benefit. Persons were able to get over $1,200 a month. And that is the difference between countries and among countries when you make your recommendations, when you implement your recommendations in a timely manner. And Grenada is facing a serious liquidity risk. And if we don't address it now, and we keep saying every year we need to do it and it's not being done, but if it's not done now, we are seriously going to end up in a case where we have no fund. So in order to meet its monthly obligations, the National Insurance Board has been forced to break several of its investments instruments before their maturity date. The instruments that have been liquidated thus far are term deposits, as they are easily converted to cash to earn relatively low interest. So this is what has happened. In 2021, what we collected, both in contribution and investment income, could not cover. So we had to break 8 term deposits totaling $14 million. So ladies and gentlemen, we had to dip into the reserves that we like to look at the N.I.S. books and say, wow, N.I.S. has a lot of money. Again, in 2022, $14.45 million in term deposits were liquidated in order to pay out benefits. And it is projected that for 2023, this year, we would have to liquidate $22.8 million in term deposits. So it means if our investments, we have to cash them in early, it means they're not there earning returns for us. It means it puts the fund into further jeopardy. So we need to act now. We need to do something now. And I know it is easy to say, no, let's defer it and this sort of thing. But if we don't act now, and not just with one action, because we've waited for so long, one action would not be able to give our fund the longevity that we see that St. Lucia has. So the actuary is saying that you have to increase the retirement age, you have to increase the contribution rate, you have to also change your pension formula. So there are quite a few changes that must be made for there to be an impact, because one change would not solve it. Now, after the 13th review, let's go again before I show you how far those changes would take us. The key findings again, the actuary saying that total expenditure will exceed total income in all of the years. And I'm telling you that so far it has happened. Yeah? In all of the years. So if we continue to do nothing, the funds will be depleted between 2033 and 2035. And then, guess what? The contribution rate automatically again would have to go to between 24 to 26% just to be able to pay benefits. So just for your grandmother and my grandmother to get their pension, automatically the contribution rate would have to be at that amount. No consultation needed. Else, benefits would not be payable. Then, when the reserves are exhausted, we have two choices. The rate increases to be able to do it, or we depend on the government to do special transfers every month. And I'm sure none of us inside here, I saw some people start to laugh. Somebody turned their face and was like, no, I definitely don't want to depend on that. And I know absolutely none of us want to depend on any policymaker, any government to wait at the end of the month to say, well, let me see when the money would come in. We want to make sure we continue that on the 20th of every month, you could put your pot on the fire, your money is available in the bank. And in order for that to happen, we have to make sure we make those changes. So at that point, if nothing, no reserve. So there is no need for an investment department because there will be nothing to invest. You're not collecting any extra money. So let's see what we have to do. We must gradually increase the pensionable age. We must do it, and we must do it now. So this is what is recommended. Next year, the pension age would increase to 61. So we want you to defer your pension, but if you decide for some reason you want your pension early, and you take it early, then it will be at a reduced rate. So if next year, if you decide to take it, your pension rate would be reduced by 5%. In 2025, the pensionable age would be 62. If you take it 2 years early, you would suffer a decrease of 10%, 1 year early, 5%, and so on and so forth until we get to 2028, where the retirement age will be 65. And we want you to take your pension at 65. We want you to continue to work on contributing so that our Social Security Fund could continue. In addition to that, the contribution rate also needs to gradually increase. And we know we've had one increase already, but it was not to ensure the sustainability of the N.I.S. We introduced a new benefit called the unemployment benefit. So that 1% covers you if you lose your job, and the deputy director will focus on that. But starting next year, every year until 2031, the contribution rate would increase by 0.5%. So employees would pay an extra 0.25%, employers would pay an extra 0.25%. So next year, God's will, we would go to 12.5%. So the employee rate, of course, would go to 5.75. This year is 5.5. So you pay an extra 0.25%. And that's the contribution rate increase. And more adjustments need to be done. So we need to adjust the current rate at which pensions are paid. So right now, for the first 10 years you work, you get 30% upfront. So it's really front-loaded. And usually, for Social Security institutions, that is done because when you just launch, you have not enough time for pensioners to accumulate the required number of weeks to get a pension. So you do that. But as you age, you want to make sure you balance it out. And that's one of the things we need to do. So we're currently at 30% for the first 5, but that needs to change to 25% for the first 10, and then 1% thereafter. We also need to let persons know that if you continue to work, in some cases, you would not be able to claim your pension. So if you continue to work after the pension age has increased, if you continue to work and you're earning more than 60% of the insurable earning ceiling, currently the ceiling is $5,000, that's a maximum salary on which N.I.S. is payable. If you're earning more than 60% of the ceiling, then you would not be able to claim your pension. If you're earning less than that, then you would be able to. Also, the increase in the number of contributions required to qualify for a pension also needs to increase. So right now, we're at 500, right? But next year, 2024, it is recommended that we go to 525 until 2033, where we would reach to 750, similar to what you've seen in St. Vincent and the other islands. And if we do some of them, it would only take us to around 36, 38 years. if we decide, no, we're not doing all of that. Let's just pick a few again. Let's continue to cherry pick, and we just implement a few of them. But if we are really serious this time about saving NIS Grenada, we have to implement all of the recommendations, all of them. Pension rate, pension age, contribution rate, number of contributions required for a pension, the formula to qualify for a pension, all of that has to increase. All of that has to change. And if it changes, then it takes us to just around 56 years. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a quote from the ECCB. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank says that social security systems are in need of reform, and failure to implement these reforms can result in financial instability of the social security systems and the instability of the ECCU financial sector. So if NIS Grenada, NIS Antigua, NIS St. Lucia, and all of us in the region do not do what we're supposed to do not make the required changes when we're supposed to, we can forget about the stability of our EC dollar and what's happening in the region right now. So this is bigger than NIS Grenada. This is a regional problem where if it's not implemented, if we continue to defer it, if we continue to say, well, no, I don't want no change, I want my pension at 60, if we continue to be happy with every month we have to break term deposits and dip into the reserves to pay benefits and eventually reach to a point where it's zero and we continue to pass the can, kick the ball down the road and decide, well, we're not doing nothing, eventually there will be no NIS or we have to depend on those transfers. So I beg, is that really what we want for our NIS? Thank you very much. I now turn back over to Mr. Gordon.
Just a note for those that just came in, we'll save all the questions until the end of the presentation by Deputy Director Cindy Ann St. Bernard. All right, so we just give the Deputy Director a few minutes while she mics up. Her presentation will be on the new unemployment benefit and the revamped self-employed regulations. Okay, welcome the Deputy Director, Ms. Cindy Ann St. Bernard.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jocelyn Augustus Latouche, Principal of the current government school, Mr. Filbert Lewis, Chairman of the National Insurance Board, Mr. Dorset Cromwell, Director of the NIS, other members of management, specially invited guests, welcome all. So this afternoon, I have the privilege, I would say, to present to you two of the new exciting changes that are taking place at the NIS. So we are going to look at the unemployment benefits. We'll look at who will be covered, what are the qualifying conditions, how can someone be disqualified from the benefits, and other parameters of the benefits. Then we would go on to look at the self-employed, the shortcomings of our existing program, the suggestions that came out from consultations that we had, and present to you the new approach to the self-employed coverage. Okay, so let us look at unemployment. What is the definition of unemployment? When we say that someone can qualify for an unemployment benefit, it means that an individual must have lost their job through no fault of their own, and they must be available for work but cannot find the work. So for instance, if I decide, you know what, I'm tired, maybe I should just take a break. N.I.S. has an unemployment benefits. I'm going to take a break for a while, stay home, collect the benefits, and then go back to work when I'm ready. Would I qualify for the benefit? No, because I am choosing to leave my job to go home as opposed to my employer, for whatever reason, sending me home. So I must have lost my job through no fault of my own, but I'm available and willing to work. Who will be covered? Private sector workers, statutory bodies, government of Grenada workers, work permit holders, and self-employed persons. And many persons have said, how did y'all agree to cover self-employed workers? Grenada is probably one of the definitely one of the first in the region, and one of very few countries that provide unemployment benefits to self-employed persons. When we introduced the employment injury benefits to the self-employed persons, many persons were like, they're going to abuse it. But from our experience, we have not seen the abuse. Self-employed persons, unlike what we may believe, are very responsible persons, and we do not expect that these persons would abuse the unemployment benefits. So what are the qualifying conditions? You must have worked a minimum of 52 weeks in your whole working life. So you cannot just start working today and qualify for unemployment benefits. So you must have amassed 52 weeks of contributions. You must also have paid or have credited 8 contributions in the last 13 weeks immediately prior to you becoming unemployed. And it does not end there. You must also have paid or have credited 13 contributions in the last 26 weeks before becoming unemployed. Once you would have met those 3 qualifying conditions, then unemployment will be payable from the first day if your unemployment lasts for 1 week. So the minimum waiting period is 1 week. So if you're unemployed for 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, you would not qualify for the benefits. So you must have been unemployed for at least 1 week to qualify. What would the benefit amount be? So this benefit aims to replace 50% of your insurable earnings. You would recall that we have a ceiling on which we pay. So the ceiling currently is at $5,000. So let's say, for example, you're working for $6,000. You would not receive 50% of the $6,000 because you are not paying N.I.S. contributions on the $6,000, you're paying on the $5,000. So you would receive 50% of the ceiling that you're paying on. What are the eligibility requirements? I must be in insurable employment, so I must have been working, and I must be under the pensionable age. So since the benefit was introduced in May of this year, we have received quite a bit of claims, but unfortunately, several of them are for persons who were unemployed prior to the implementation of the benefit in May. So you cannot have been unemployed prior and qualify for the benefits. You can only become unemployed after the program was implemented, and you must be under the pensionable age, which currently stands at 60. But remember, we're talking about increasing it gradually to 65. So that pensionable age is going to be moving up until it gets to 65 over the next few years. Oops, sorry. Next requirement. If the maximum duration of 13 weeks is exhausted, then an individual will have to wait for another 52 weeks to pass. So let's say, for example, I become unemployed in 2023. I was unemployed for 3 months. I got paid my 13 weeks of benefits. I become unemployed again within the same year. I would not qualify for the benefit twice because I would have received the maximum, which is 13 weeks in any 1 year. I must now return to work and work for another 52 weeks before I can qualify again. I must be ready, willing, and capable of working every day. So unemployment benefit is not a benefit for you to just stay home and relax. It's a benefit to hold you over until you find yourself another job. But for you to find another job, you must be actively seeking one. You must not have refused suitable employment. So let's say, for example, I'm an accountant, I lost my job, I was offered another job as an accountant, and I refused to take it. I would not be eligible for the benefit. I must have completed all my assigned training. So as part of the program, what would be introduced is a job matching service. And what the job matching service is going to aim to do is to match unemployed persons to available jobs. So let's say the program, there are lots of accountants who are out there unemployed, but there may not be accounting jobs available. There may be other managerial positions. But for the person to be able to qualify, they may have to go through a period of training to be retooled to function in that new job. So that person would be assigned a certain amount of training that they would be expected to complete. And if they don't complete it, then they would not be eligible. You must be residing in Grenada. So I cannot decide, do I become unemployed and I travel to the US for a while and expect to collect unemployment from Grenada. That's not going to fly either. You have to be residing in Grenada because, remember, you have to be actively searching for a job. The individual will also be required to report every 2 weeks. So this benefit is going to be payable in 2-week tranches. So I become unemployed today. My first payment is going to be due 2 weeks from now, right? At the end of that 2-week period, I have to come to the N.I.S. I have to declare that I'm still unemployed to get another 2 weeks of payment. And you do so until either you get a job or you exhaust the 13-week period that you're going to be paid within the 52-week period. Your employer, once you're terminated, would be required to submit a termination certificate. And on that certificate, the employer is going to include certain information like when you became unemployed, whether you were paid any kind of vacation pay, any paid leave, and that kind of information, which will determine when your unemployment benefit is going to start. So this qualification, as I previously said, I voluntarily left my job, I'm disqualified. If I'm confined to jail, penitentiary, or hospital, I will be disqualified because remember, you're supposed to be actively seeking employment. So if I'm in jail or if I'm sick in a hospital, can I be actively seeking a job? No. If I'm dismissed for misconduct, so if I commit fraud, I stole from my employer, I would not be qualified. If I'm presented with an opportunity for an alternative job and I don't take it, I will not be qualified. And if I fail to attend the training courses without good cause, I would also be disqualified. So what are the other key parameters? A contribution rate of 1% shared equally between the employee and employer. So the employer pays 0.5%, the employee pays 0.5%. The N.I.S. established an efficient job matching service, which I spoke about already. The payment of the unemployment benefit shall commence 3 months from the payment of the contribution, and the contribution started in February of this year, and the benefit was implemented in May of this year, so that's a 3-month period. The time for claiming the benefit will be no later than 15 days from the date when unemployment began. And when layoff is permanent, vacation pay, pay in lieu of notice, severance are considered employment income and will defer the start date of unemployment. So let's say, for example, I receive vacation pay of 2 months. at the date of termination, what it means is that I would only become eligible for unemployment payments 2 months later. And again, the employer has to submit the termination certificate. So what's the current status? The benefit was implemented in May, and claims are currently being submitted and paid. So far we would have gotten in excess of 60 claims. Unfortunately, a lot of them were from persons who were unemployed prior to May 1st, but there are claims where persons are qualifying and are receiving payments. So we're moving on to our new self-employed approach. So with our existing self-employed program, there are many shortcomings that makes persons very unwilling to participate in the program. So with the self-employed now, we treat them as normal employers, where you are required to contribute into the fund by the 14th day of each month. So each employer is supposed to make the contributions on behalf of their employees by the 14th day of the month, failing which you are charged surcharge and interest. And self-employed persons are expected to conform to this. They are expected to do exactly as an employer would normally do. But given the nature of self-employed persons, where their income is not consistent, persons are less interested in participating, because do I want to participate in a program where I know for sure there are months when I would not be able to pay? Just by the mere fact that I may earn some of my income a certain time of the year, and then there are months when I wouldn't make any money at all. But even in those months, I'm expected to contribute. I'm expected to pay by the 14th, and if I don't, I am charged. Then another shortcoming is where employees, if I'm an employee and I'm self-employed at the same time, I'm only allowed to pay contributions on my employed income. I'm not allowed to pay on my self-employed. So I may have a side gig where I earn much more than I make in my normal employment, but because of the existing regulations, I can only pay on my existing employee income, and I cannot pay on my self-employed. So at the end of the day, when I get to 60, my pension is really irrelevant to me, because most of the money I was making was from my self-employed business, which I was unable to pay contributions on. So what we did last year, we held a series of consultations with self-employed persons to hear from them what it is you would want us to consider to make the program more attractive for you, to make you more willing to participate. And these are some of the suggestions that came out. Removing the requirement for the specific timing of payments as the 14th day by the 14th day. Then getting rid of the surcharge and interest. Then we looked at, they suggested that that persons be allowed to contribute when funds are available, so I should be allowed to pay when I want, based on when I have income, and not at a stipulated time every month. Allowance should be made for lump sum payments throughout the year. So these are some of the suggestions that came out of these consultations. And I am happy to report the board and our policy makers listened, and they took on board all of the suggestions, I believe. And I'm happy to introduce the new flexed approach to self-employed coverage, where self-employed persons would no longer be required to contribute on a set monthly amount. You can pay how much you want and when you want during the year. Of course, there will be a maximum on which you can pay for, which currently amounts to $7,180. And of course, there will be a minimum in which you have to pay to qualify for short-term benefits, which will be $769 a year. The total contributions that you pay during that year will be converted to a number of weekly contributions, and your short-term benefits will be based on the contributions you paid the previous year in the following year. So for example, the contributions I pay in 2022, my short-term benefits for 23 would be based on my 2022 contributions. So every year, that would change. Self-employed persons will also be allowed to pay on both incomes up to the maximum. So I can now pay as an employee and I can pay as a self-employed person. I know there are a lot of persons who would be very excited to know that. And the changes took effect from July. So we're like 10, 11 days into those changes. So we're really hoping that self-employed persons would get excited about NIS once more, because we have now created a program that is more flexible, that more suits the way that you generate your income. It makes it easier for you to pay. It makes it easier for you to qualify for benefits. It just makes it easy, more easy all around. So we would expect to see more self-employed persons qualifying for a pension, because right now, although we have persons who pay into the system, a lot of the times they do not contribute enough to qualify them for a pension. So this new flexible approach, we are hoping that self-employed persons will get excited and jump on board and start contributing to the NIS. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. St. Bernard. I would now like to invite you, the public, to ask any questions. So if you could come to the mic that we have provided at the back, introduce yourself, and then we'll try and find someone, either the speakers or other members of staff, to answer your question.
Pleasant afternoon.
Afternoon.
It's a good gesture, but the more I listen, the more I get confused, and more question is added on my page. My name, just say Mr. Man. That's enough. Yeah. I have basically 6. I'm not sure if I could run all or do it by bits.
We could do a couple, and then we give other
Right,
people
thank
a
you,
chance.
thank you. First of all, I would like to know, what is the main purpose of the NIS? And maybe can I help to answer the question? Is it for the benefits, or do you want people, after they would have worked hard and long, and they reach an age where they're supposed to be resting? No, the NIS is telling them, older you get, still continue to work. Hold back that money until you reach, let's say, 65 years, whereby you will have no health and you will have no purpose, even for the NIS pension. So I would like to know, what is the main purpose of the NIS? Is it for the little benefits, or is it for when you work hard to get the pension in the end, retiring? 1. So, go ahead. 2.
Go ahead with the second question.
Now, once you pay your contribution, I believe it's mandatory that you get pension. I'm not sure if I am mistaken by hearing that certain people may not be able to get pension even if they have contributed. Did I hear that, or I'm just hearing wrong? There was some condition whereby they would not be able to get pension even if they paid contribution. Is that true?
If you don't meet the requirements, or if you don't make the stipulated amount of contributions.
Okay, well, yeah, that's automatic. Okay. I thought you mean even if they did, they will still.
Once you meet the
not get
requirements,
it.
then you would
well,
be.
yeah, that's it. All right, I will go to the third one, which I think I probably said already. It's unfair to tell a man or a woman to wait, hold on to your money until you have dead to get a pension. All right, so I will just leave the rest and come back. Right? Somebody, please. Thank you.
All right, so I'll pass the question on to our first speaker, Lisa Douglas, in terms of the purpose of the NIS and benefits and pension. But what as a comment I will make in terms of people are working a lot longer than age 60. If you look at the studies that are out there, 60, and you look at what's happening in the rest of the region. Grenada is the only country with a pension age of 60.
Go to the first one. Go back. No, no, no. Okay, good afternoon. Dorset Cromwell, Director. So yes, the purpose of the N.I.S. is for a pension, right? There are short-term benefits, we pay sickness, we pay maternity, etc. But the main purpose is to pay pensions. And so what we have to ensure is that at the end of the day, we can pay a pension, right? So what we as individuals have to decide is whether I want my pension at age 60 and nobody else get a pension. That is the fundamental question for N.I.S. Grenada, right? So that is the question that we as a country and as a people have to decide. I want my pension at 60, I do not want to change that, and what would happen to other persons. This slide here, if you are, and I've said it when I did the presentations, right? If you are in your 30s or 40s right now, and maybe even early 50s in Grenada, and if everything stay exactly as is, you will not get a pension. And if you do get a pension, there are many months when you'll have to wait for the pension. That's just the reality of the situation. You'll have to wait for the pension, just like Antigua. I'm not sure if you were here when Mrs. Douglas made the point about Antigua. Because in Antigua, when you go to the Antigua Social Security system, they tell you come back a couple of months. She probably did not make reference to the person who waited 2 years to get a maternity allowance, right? So if we in Grenada decide, similar to how the people in Antigua and the government of Antigua behave, and decide, okay, we're not going to do anything, we're going to bury our heads in the sand, right, and leave the system exactly as is for 40-something years, that is the reality that we will face. You're not going to get a pension. Just go to the next slide. No. The one right after. Right, yeah, right. And why is that so? It is so fundamentally because from 2002 to 2021, we made no changes to the N.I.S. Why? Because we as a country, as a people, and as a government decided we're not making any changes to the N.I.S. because there is always a good reason not to make the change, and because some people are making a call not to make the change. So the reality of the situation is we can leave everything as is, right? But most of us will not get a pension, or we will have to pay 22 and 23% to get a pension. So that is a choice we have to make as a country and as a people. So that's your first question. What's the second one? Yeah, both of them? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Sure.
I will have heard what you say. And I think this is only one angle of it. And it may not be all the truth. I'm not calling you a liar. But we have other recommendations that could be taken. Now, if the main reason for N.I.S. is for the pension old age, why can't we lessen on the benefits? Eliminate some benefits because you're aiming at the pension. You have other investments, you have loans, you have other areas where revenue is being generated. All right? I can't tell you to take a cut on your salary, neither reduce their workforce. But in this instance, if it is so kind of die hard now to make changes, and too much of changes at one time, in my opinion, just for the NIS to survive, I believe if the main purpose is that the new benefits that we added over the years puts an extra load upon the NIS. And I believe if we take some of them out, we could actually survive. I'm not saying don't increase. Just don't increase too much. And the age increasing. But my point is we must get people their money after they would have. In other words, listen. I am paying NIS, I suppose, for 40 years. I expect after 40 years, I have my pension there. That's not selfish thing. It's like a susu. You pay the money, you expect to have it there. But thank God, you would invest in it and generate profit from that. You have fixed deposits, you have other stuff. So you don't always have to take in from them fixed deposits. You have other things to generate. But my thing is, I'm not saying to leave it at 60, but the money should be there when people are ready for the money, when they work hard and old.
Yeah, well, precisely the point we're making. And we're saying the only way to make sure that the monies are there is to make changes. But let me clarify one thing. You always have the opportunity to take your pension at age 60. So irrespective of what age the pension, the retirement age gets to, you can take your pension at 60. Oh, okay. But you would have to take a slight deduction, right? And let me make one further point, because we like to talk about the NIS pension, and the NIS pension is small and so forth, right? I can guarantee you, right, that if we do your pension calculation, right, and you could call the office tomorrow, Mrs. Douglas will work it out for you, that if you do your pension calculation, right, good? Mm-hmm. All of the monies that you receive from that you pay to the NIS, you get it back in 2.5 years. So,
not in my case.
In your case, no. I can guarantee you that. Not so call the office tomorrow, right? Call the office tomorrow, and we will show you, right? So what happens? We have people, pensioners on our payroll, who are 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years old, right? And after 2.5 years, they collected all of the monies. What they contributed, right, and what the employer contributed. Mm-hmm. So what are the monies they're collecting? The monies they're collecting after the 2.5 years comes from where? Right? That is why pension is so expensive, and that is why few employers offer occupational pension, and few governments offer pension, and that is why governments themselves are getting out of pensions.
Okay. Shall I quickly? Pay attention, please. I called. It wasn't yesterday. Maybe about 2 years ago or even more. And I asked them concerning my NIS contributions, because I knew that I overpaid already by far. I had been paying pension since 18 years, 18. Now I'm 50-something, close to retire. So what they said to me is that the excess money, because I wanted them to stop, and they said, no, that's the law. They will lock you up. All right, anyhow. So they said the excess money, they are putting it in a pool. Am I correct, or did the person lie to me? They are putting it in a pool. Hey, don't fire anybody, yeah? In that, when I have to collect the pension, there's a way how they are doing it, so probably I will get a little more. Mm-hmm. Now, I want to also further ask, because it is extended to 65 years, is the pension that would have been 60 years, legitimately now, linger on to 65, would we be getting more on that pension dollar, the month of money? Would it be more?
Okay.
I just asked. Thank you very much.
All right. I'm trying to remember what was the first question. You said a lot. Right? In relation to what the person would have told you, right? When you get a 500 contributions, you get 30%, right? That's your pension amount, 30% of your last salary, right? And every year you pay after that, it increases by 1%, but you get a maximum of 60%. So irrespective of whether it goes to 65 or not, the maximum you can get to is 60%. Right? 60% of essentially your last salary. If you want to do a rough calculation, it's 60% of your last salary. Right? But not salary, insurable wage. Right? Up to the maximum of the $5,000. Right? But I would encourage you to call the office and speak to Mrs. Douglas. Yes. And let us run your pension estimate and show you that over a very small period of time, you get back all of the monies that you pay to the N.I.S. Yes.
All right, good afternoon. Justin Courtney, the name?
Afternoon.
Right. I must congratulate the N.I.S. on the efforts to do a great job, but still I'm not too satisfied with the great job. So I have some queries. First of all, so I'm commenting really. As the years go by, people's salary is increasing. So I think when I started to work, I was at about $500. So my contribution there, 4%, would have been what, $20? All right, so $20 for a few years. And I continued and gradually, probably by the time I finish work, I might be at the $5,000 ceiling. Now, was any calculation done to ascertain my total contributions as against my pension? Now, yes, I want a lot and I want more. But if you're talking sustainability, what you'll find happening is that in the latter years, my latter working years, my contribution will go up, but still does not compensate enough for my early working years. And so that formula that we're using, which is 1% on my last salary, so in other words, like this year I'm getting 1% on my last salary for increase, might just put us in some form of trouble. So possibly a more equitable formula can be used where a proper average over contributions can be had. Now, I want to ensure not just I get pension, but I want to ensure that those who work out there, my children, will be in a position to say that when they get old, they can have a social security system that can benefit them. So I see after you do all that you do there, probably you might extend by another 50 years, and then you might have to do something crazy again to extend by another 50 years. So if, if it's possible that when you're doing, you really sit down and do something good so that the life of the N.I.S. can be sustained for as long as possible. I noticed that you lamented from 2002 to 2021, nothing was done to help the N.I.S. to be sustainable. And possibly, we have to look at our social security laws, and possibly maybe the minister or maybe the government might have too much power over our business in that regard. So for want of vote or something, because it might be unpopular, for it to take that decision, I would not want that to happen in the future. Right? So we have to look at how do we ensure that the N.I.S. operates in a sustainable way, popular or unpopular. Again, it's hard to believe, but if you have long life, you do extend what you would have contributed and what you're proud of contributing. Right? The sad thing is that not all of us have long life. So those with long life will benefit from those of us who have short life. And it's just the way of life, you know? So that was my comments. My question now. Your calculations. You said that, well, I was thinking about, kind of going at 60. I realized that I will lose maybe about 20 or 25% of what I projected to get. So I noticed that you said 750 contribution is the minimum, but you said that that would be in 2020 something, right? But you already spoke of a 25% before you get the 1%. So is that 25% the rate when you reach in 2028? Or is that 25% the rate right now? Because I noticed that 25% was mentioned. And the 25% is in keeping with the 750 contribution by my mathematical calculation. So what am I operating on now? If I decide to go home in the next 6 years, what am I operating on? So give me the real maths of what I'm operating on. I'm going home in 6 years. I was expecting that in 6 years I would have been getting 60% of my salary. But as it stands now, there'll be some deductions because I cannot go in 6 years. So give me the real maths, slowly, because if you give me fast, I might not understand, but I want to help others so that they will know if to stone you or if not.
We had some bad experience in St. David's before, in this very said venue. But even then, they didn't stone us, so we're hoping you wouldn't stone us this time, right? And you made some useful comments. Clearly, you are reading the literature, because you spoke about, I think you intimated that career average calculation, which a lot of the European countries do, right? But the career average calculation depresses the pension a bit, so that is the downside of it, but it is good for the social security system. We use 5 years, right? And we have talked about increasing it to 7 and 10, right? And the ideal situation is what you are suggesting, increase it almost over the person's entire career, right? So it helps the social security system, but it depresses the pension, right? Which is the objective, you get a smaller pension. Although you index the earlier years, right? I don't want to get into the literature to confuse persons, right? And then you spoke about the issue of the government having too much power. And if you study the actuarial reviews, right, the last 7 or 8, all of them have said, control this issue by putting a number of these matters in the regulation. How you adjust the pension, how you adjust the increase in the retirement age, exactly, put them in the regulation so you take the power away from the policymaker. So the policymaker, when it comes to election, does not decide, right, against or for the N.I.S. It is in the regulation, it has to happen. So that is how you control it, right? With regards to the particular, in terms of how your particular, right, how the pension is adjusted. So as Mrs. Douglas would have explained before, I think if you are retiring, for instance, if you are retiring in 2027, that's where you are? That's where you will retire?
No, something more than that.
Okay, right. Right. So let's say you're going to be 60 in 2028, right? At that point in time, the retirement age would be 65, right? Good? Right? Now, if you take your pension at age 60, yes, you are facing a 25% reduction, right? But remember, the objective of increasing the retirement age is to encourage persons to take their pension at the retirement age, right? For the reasons because the N.I.S. is facing financial and actuarial issues, so you want persons to delay their pension and take it at the retirement age. That is the objective, right? And that is why when this recommendation is implemented in almost every social security system, any part of the world, you always have this adjustment, right? You can choose to take it early, but you would have to take the reduction in the pension rate, right? But even with those reduction in the pension rate, because in Grenada, for instance, we are asking you now, you are paying what? 12%, 1% for the unemployment benefit. So we're paying essentially 11%, 5 and 6, right? The reality of the situation, and for the pensions that persons are getting, right, you really should be paying in the vicinity, if you do the calculation and you calculate the internal rate of return, you really should be paying in the vicinity of 19 and 18%, right? That is just the reality of the situation. And that is why all social security schemes, every part of the world that are defined benefit and structured like this will eventually get into issues and have to make these types of adjustments, right? So even when you face this reduction of 25%, on average, you would still collect all of the monies, right, that you would have paid to the N.I.S., you and your employer, in a very short period of time. That is because pensions are extremely expensive and people do not want to do them. Employers do not want to do them. Governments are running from pension, an extremely expensive venture.
You didn't do the math, sir. Mm-hmm. So you showed 25%. So that 25% is on what? Is it, if I calculate, like I said, let's do a $4,000 salary, right? So a $4,000 salary, 60% of that is 6 was 24, 2,400.
Yes.
That's what I was expecting.
Oh,
at,
okay. No,
well, let's do it enough.
No, but
So I was expecting that at 60.
The reduction is on the rate here, so you have to be careful, right? So when we work your pension, we calculate a weekly rate, right? That's how we calculate.
So you
pension.
arrive at the weekly rate. You see, pension and retirement is something that people have to plan for, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have to know what you're getting into at least a year or two before. Mm-hmm. So for example, based on your calculations, I can determine, I could just scratch my head
Lisa.
and say, look, at 60, from 60 go up to 65, I might make back what I'm losing if I live for another 5 years on 60. So I will have to determine whether I wait, have patience and wait, or whether I grab. And to be able to do that, I must be able to calculate and plan. So, like I said, let's work a $4,000 salary. Easy.
Yeah, it's not that easy, right, to do it.
So it's harder than that?
No. It's not that easy to do it like that, right? And not very practical to stand here and calculate it like that, because there are a couple things that are in the pension formula, right? In the pension formula is the number of years you work, good? Which would give you your rate, the 30% to the 60%. So that is there. Because for your first 500, for your first 500 contribution, you get 30%, and for each 50 contributions thereafter, you get 1%. So that is part of the formula, right? Then the other part of the formula is your actual salary over a period, in this case, 5 years. So I have your salary over a period of 5 years, right? And I take an average of that.
Okay.
Right? So that's the second part. That's the second part of the formula, right? So I must know, right, how long you work for to get your rate, whether it's 30%, 40%, 50%, 60%.
No, already
secondly,
alluded to that we were working with 60% of whatever.
Right. And
so that means the maximum. So that means I would have calculated the 30% for the first 10 years.
Right.
Mr. Mann said that you're robbing for 2 years. And that might be true because if you look at it, really and truly, your working age should start about 20 to give you that N.I.S. thing of 60%. You got to work for 40 years of your life. Go ahead. That was the original task. I work for 40 years, I get 60%. Now I'm asked to work for 45 years to get 60%. I think that's the case. So in case that I chose to work for the 40 years and not the 45 years, what are we calculating on?
Same 6. Your maximum still remains at 60. Right? The maximum you can get to still remains at 60. And you have to compare that, right? You see, in countries like ours, and I would say in Grenada too, right? We want everything and we want to give up little, right? Hold on. And we forget that the pension that countries like ours, Grenada, Antigua, St. Lucia, etc., offer are very generous and more generous than OECD countries like Canada and the US and so forth. Because whereas, so you are talking about the 60% and you're intimating that we should go further than the 60%. But in
No.
hold on.
I'm not intimating
Right.
that at all.
But in countries, in the OECD countries, Canada, for instance, the rate that it goes up to is 40-something%, right? And that's the reality. So the 60% is generous. It is some of these very said parameters that have us in trouble, right? So yes, we are increasing the number of contribution to 750. We absolutely have to do it for the survival of the N.I.S. Grenada, right? But we cannot increase the rate along with it because it would make absolutely no sense. It would be counterproductive, right? So the rate stays between 30% and 60% maximum. What I am doing, hold on, remember it's a pension you're getting, eh? And I am replacing 60% of your earning while you were a worker. And we are saying to you, right, by other means, insurance, saving, etc., you have to try to replace another 10 or 12%, right? Ideally, you want somebody in retirement to retire with about 70-75% of their pre-retirement income. That is the goal, right? Not 100%. And it's the reason why governments got into problems, because government employees in the past went home better off than when they were working, right? So you're working for 5,000 and you're getting a pension and gratuity for 8,000. It is not sustainable. It cannot work.
Pension, not pension and gratuity. Pension.
Yeah.
The whatever is the name of the pension again, is just your salary or
Yeah.
minus or plus, right? So, but still, we still ain't okay. Let's take it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, based on your previous calculation, after 40 years, you'll be at 60%. All right? Now, so let's suppose you calculate and the 60% was 2004. The 25% now comes off on the 2004? Or is it a case that you revert me back to 35%?
No. So a couple of things, as I said before, right? We take, and we can do it in specific cases, but I don't want to stand up here and do a calculation. I don't think that is productive, right? And it could be very well misleading. So I wouldn't do that, right? But let me just explain what will happen and where the 25% adjustment is taking place. So the formula is 5 years, right? So I take all of your salaries over 5 years. Good? I get an average annual salary. I divide it by 5. So give me annual. Okay. Then I break it down to monthly, divided by 12, right? Or 52. I break it down to weekly, right? And then I multiply that by the 30% or the 40% or the 50% or 60%. Okay? And that gives me the rate, your weekly rate. So let me go back over it. You have 5 years of salary. I divide it by 5. I get an annual salary. Good? Then I divided that annual salary by 52 because most months have 52 weeks. I get a weekly salary. I now multiply your weekly salary by the 30% or the 40% or the 50% or the 60%, right? That you have. And that gives me a weekly rate. And it is on that rate that we pay, and that rate where we will take the 25% adjustment from. Yeah.
Good enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. Okay? Is that him? And you got the gentleman at the back. You got the. She showed you. Good. And how much years before you get back all of your monies?
Well, she mentioned something briefly
Conveniently so. Eh? All right, okay, good, good, good.
Okay, good evening. Okay, in 2028, right, you said that the contributions has to increase to 750. What's about the persons who have had 500 contributions and they said that they have fully satisfied the NIS benefit option? What happens to these persons? Would they be paid based on the 500 contribution, or would they have to be deemed to go back to work to make the 750 contributions before they are paid?
Well, we say to people, we never say to you to stop paying at 500, right? We never say that. And where people would have come and said, listen, I make my 500, I want to stop, we say, don't do that. It is detrimental to you. It is detrimental to you when it was 500, and it will be more detrimental to you when it is now 750, because then you would not qualify for a pension. Right? So we always have to listen to the right sources, right? And get the right education on the matter. So unfortunately, if you decide, through education or ignorance, you decide that you're going to stop pay at 500 and the rate increases to 600, unfortunately, you're on your own.
Okay, no, I just jotted at the...
Yeah, but we never tell people to stop paying at 500. And we encourage people, because if you stop at 500, you get only a 30% pension. And you certainly don't want to go home with a 30% pension, right? And if you continue paying every year thereafter, you can go up as far as 60%, which is the ideal situation that you want to go with.
Yeah, that's what I know, but most Grenadians basically would not avail themselves to that, and some people only learn by the way. So I guess a lot of people who might be in a comfort zone thinking that they would get pension at the later years to come may find themselves very much out of pocket. So
I don't think so, because the data that we see does not suggest that.
doesn't suggest that?
Does not suggest that.
Okay.
I am pretty sure if I take all my active contributors, everybody who is supposed to have more than 500 contribution, but that's for people who work in consistently, because you have persons in construction who are not working consistently, that you don't see an undue high density of people who who just have 500 contribution.
Okay,
So-
and you mentioned that you encourage people to pay all the time. So before, was there a clause that said after you have worked 25 years paying NIS continuously, that you don't have to pay it if you don't wish to pay it? No?
No, there never was.
It
There
was
never
never
was.
a clause in the NIS fine prints for that?
No, never.
Okay, I'm just
No.
finding out.
No, never.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Just two quick questions. Currently, right now, you hearing me right?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
hearing you.
If you work after the pension age, which is 60, your employer pay 1% for you. Will the age going up, would that remain at the 1%, or would it be going, as far as you're working, you're paying your full,
Yes.
that's with the new
Yes.
policy?
Yes.
Secondly, there were consensus done, I think back in 2016 or 2017, and votes were made whether to increase or not to increase. No, nothing was done.
Yes.
So my question is, we're doing this again right now, right? Who is the body that will say we are going to increase or not increase? Because as you can see, based on your projection over 2002 to now, it's been yearly or every couple of years, it's been recommended, and it goes back to voting and nothing happens. So at this point, what is the next step?
Right. So we are happy to report that all of these changes that we have suggested to increase the retirement age, increase the contribution rate, adjust the accrual rate, make the N.I.S. pension a retirement pension, so no longer an age pension, implement the unemployment benefit. The government of Grenada has said, all right, listen, we're not kicking the can down the road anymore, all right, and that we are with you with the N.I.S. and we're going to make those changes, all right, and all those changes are in train. Yes?
Good afternoon. I have a comment and a question. It always amazes me that when we discuss pensions and stuff, we look at the aspect of the contribution, the length of years to contribute, and we somehow don't inform the public of the efficiency or inefficiencies of running those schemes. Yeah, I think this would go a long way if you tell people what it takes to run the N.I.S. Yeah, and whether it is running efficiently or inefficiently, because that too can contribute to the demise of pension schemes. Yeah. When you mentioned that the pension, you would recoup your contribution plus the employer's contribution in 2 years. I wonder why mine take 3 1/4.
I didn't hear the last.
I say I'm wondering why my recouping took 3 1/4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, average, yeah? So it wouldn't be the same for everybody.
Okay.
But go ahead, sorry.
And another observation I'd like to put forward is that why is it that pensions go up to, well, we're moving the age to 65 now, but at the end of there are so many pensioners, old people like me, yeah, who are enjoying the benefits of the bigger salaries by way of contracts, and you have young people who has to contribute for the next 30, 40 years, not being in a position to earn those salaries, earn the maximum, so that they can have a buffer. Then we have people who retire and they come back and earning those big salaries where they can pay the maximum contribution. While you have in the same organizations young people who have another 20, 30 years and they're not being promoted or even given the opportunity, yeah, to earn those salaries, they'll contribute more than me because they might build a house, you know. Give them the jobs, man, and because they have to contribute the bigger part, yeah. And my question now: what happens if and I'm going to laugh because it wasn't a reality and it can't be a reality. If at age 60, yeah, when all of my contributions were in and I was eligible for a pension, if I had died then, what would have happened to what benefits would have been paid to just a death benefit payment of a couple $1,000s?
Okay. All right. So let me see if I can answer you now.
Oh, and
You have one more?
Yeah, I'll just give you a scenario, and it's true. Yeah, I've been paying N.I.S. at the maximum for 90% of my working life. Yeah, and my wife has done the same thing too. Yeah, we have one child, so we had no benefits and stuff. One maternity benefit. Yeah, I have not been claiming N.I.S. of sickness for, thank God, for a lot of years. So shouldn't there be a sort of incentive or differ in calculation. I know mathematically for the actuaries it might have been difficult, but to more or less honor such people with a little, a better rate than the 1% after 50 contributions and stuff. Thanks.
Okay. All right, so you said a lot. I hope I remember everything, all right? And thanks for the questions. So I think the first question you spoke about efficiency. And of course, it's a legitimate question and a legitimate issue, all right? But where N.I.S. is concerned, we stand solid that N.I.S. Grenada is managed well, right? And I'll show you, I brought this graph back to show you, because the regulation, as it says, you have to, on the green line, says you have to keep your administrative expenditure as a percentage of contribution and benefit at 12%. That is the green line. That's what the regulation dictates. Internally, right, we have agreed, we have taken the decision that notwithstanding what the regulation is saying, we are going to keep it at 6% and below. So we halving it. And if you look at that yellow line, you can see it is trending below the 6%, and in 2021, it was around 4.4%, right? And there are other performance indicators that we can speak to that shows you the performance of the N.I.S. relative to efficiency, right? Even within the context of the OECS, we make no bones that N.I.S. Grenada is among the better run social security system in the region, yeah? And our governor, a couple of years ago, Governor Antoine, did speak to that and actually made a bold statement in that respect, right? The other question about the benefit and the pension, right? Of course, it is a trade-off, because let's take you for instance, right? You are going to recoup or may have recouped all of your pension in, 3.25 years? Have you passed the 3.25 years? No. Right. Okay. But let's assume God gives you long life and you're on the planet, let's say, and you're in your 90s, right? You realize that after the 3, from 60 to 90 is about 30 years. So you'll get 27 years of benefits that does not belong to you, right? It does not belong to you. Hold on. Hold on. No. Even with interest, right? You can't, even with interest, right? 3.25 years. And you get 27 years of money that does not belong to you. So the trade-off in social security system, they say, I am my brother's keeper. So yes, some person are going to go to 100 and get monies that they did not pay into the system. And unfortunately, some of us leave the planet a little soon and we do not get as much. But you still have the situation where if you pass away, your children, if you have young children, can get a benefit now up to the age of 21. Right? Your spouse, if she is over 50, can get it for life. And a spouse who's under 50 can get it for 1 year. But with social security system, you have a trade-off. I am my brother's keeper. One person is going to get pension for 40 years, right? And somebody, unfortunately, dies before. Nothing we can do about that and get it for a short period. It's the reality of life.
So I offer you now. I want to make on your side. Now, I realize that there is something that could undermine the NIS and that contribution thing, and that is the government. Now, if the government not working with you, and concurrently, the government also doing like what you are doing, it means then at the age of 60, whatever time, right, with the government, you could retire from the government. You may not want to just sit down without money in your hand and wait on the NIS, probably, based on what you have to do. So you have to consult with the government for this program to be successful. Yeah, and they have to do the same thing like you.
Okay.
So that's all I want to say.
Okay, good point.
All right, everyone, thank you for your thought-provoking questions. If there are no other questions, we'd like to invite Mr. Kellenberg to give us a vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. We have come to the end of our session this evening, and I know based on the presentation and the question asked that we are all more enlightened. And we know, definitely, we know about all the changes that are soon to be implemented by the NIS. But we could not have done this session without a few key persons. Ms. Colleen St. Bernard for her prayers, Ms. Cindian St. Bernard and Ms. Lisa Douglas for such an informative and riveting presentation, Mr. Max Gordon, our gracious moderator, Mrs. Latouche for allowing us to use the school to have this consultation, TNR Communication for our online viewership, and finally, a special thanks to you, our valuable stakeholders, for taking the time to be present this evening. I trust that the information shared this evening has provided clarity on why it is so important to make the proposed changes now. So thank you once again, and to everyone, a safe journey home. Thank you.